In the fallacy of our youth, death seems a distant thing that could never really affect us. We do know that we are just another mortal being, and yet it somehow just doesn't truly sink in. Every moment of our experience up until now is, of course, of being alive. So our impending death is a fact that we can kind of entertain, but we just can't place in our mind properly. And in fact, all humans aren't that great at really understanding external data or what it means to us, because deep inside, we do believe we are special. But what's amazing is this is true. We are very, very special and critically important. The issue is that we are only of critical importance to ourselves. It's only the process of aging that brings us experiences that make us wiser. Maybe your friends die, maybe some of your body parts fail, or you break things. And slowly this sense of wisdom creeps into you and arrives, hopefully, at least for some of us. And this wisdom begs us to start paying more attention to the fact that our bodies will not last forever. Your body has an expiry date, and if you aren't careful, it could end up in the trash at any moment. But besides the illusion of immortality, we fool ourselves in many other ways. The issue of feeling special is a constant truth in our mind, but a lie for understanding the rest of the world. Hello and welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast with your host, Sam Webster Harris. Today we're going to talk about 3 of the lesser known but really important ways that we lie to ourselves in relation to the belief that we are special. And along with that, I'm going to provide some of my absolute favorite stories to help these ideas sink in. So without messing around, let's go straight into the first concept. Being the first isn't the best, so this concept might not be the best. Could be. We'll find out. But here's a story to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. If you've seen the movie Dunkirk, you'll appreciate it. It was a pretty impactful time on the history of Britain and the Second World War. And in the battle and the chaotic retreat from Dunkirk, Britain was facing a terrifying loss of half its troops, but clawed some success from the jaws of defeat. 300,000 men were ferried off the beaches of France to England using basically any floating vessel that could be found. Fishermen, ferrymen, and any idiot with a boat crossed the channel to collect the British army, which is facing imminent destruction. The British Air Force flew out to protect the men during the voyage over to stop them from just being picked off from the skies, and Britain celebrated this as a success and praised their plucky achievement for the talented ingenuity of the British people who managed to save so many of its men from the foolish Nazis. General Gort, who led the evacuation, and General Alexander, who was one of the last British troops to leave Dunkirk, were not so delighted. They spoke to Churchill about the fact that Britain had just proven it was possible to ship over 300,000 men across the Channel whilst managing to avoid them all being killed in air attack. Britain may have been the first to do this, but there is now no reasons to believe that the Nazis couldn't do it either. And anything that we manage to do is copyable instantly. It's the same with the nuclear bomb. After that was developed, America was like, Russia won't be able to do this. And yet within a few years, Russia had done it. And whenever we do something that other people have not done, we kind of get this feeling that we are better. Now, this is a very common flaw bound to our predisposition to believe that we are uniquely special. But instead of us being so brilliant in the first, the opposite is true. It only becomes easier after we have done it, because people know that it can be done and they learn from our mistakes as we do it. After Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, it became a regular event, and unsurprisingly, he is now no longer the fastest person to run a mile. Today, you see all the time, many entrepreneurs start a business thinking that if they can create a unique feature first, they'll have unlimited success after that. They'll forget that any competitor can copy a feature if this feature works that they've built. And having a good idea is all well and good, but believing that it will last is just a disaster waiting to happen. I mean, just look at what Facebook was when it first came out. It's a completely different app right now, but if it had stayed the same it was, you wouldn't even know what Facebook was anymore. It would just be forgotten along with MySpace. So, first is not the best. It's just a small window of opportunity at most. Now onto concept number 2. That is that other people's problems are also our problems. Stepping back a bit further into history, if you look at Britain during the Black Plague, this had gone over all of Europe, and it began in South England in around 1348. By 1349, it spread into Wales, Ireland, and northern England. It had ripped through the population mercilessly and brought the country to its knees. Now, the Scottish at this point had not experienced the plague, and they saw this as God punishing the English. They spotted a divine opportunity whilst England was on its knees, and they excitedly gathered an army to invade the fragile English. Sadly, plagues don't just exist to weaken your enemy, and as the Scottish started marching towards England, it turns out they were just as susceptible, and within days of crossing the border, their men were either dead, dying, or fleeing in terror, and by 1350, the plague had spread across all of Scotland. Now this is a reminder to be fearful of other people's problems. It's so easy to look at someone else's problem and think that it'll not apply to us. So frequently, we attribute other people's failures to their stupidity, and if they do succeed at something, we think it's their good luck. And then when we look at ourselves, we attribute our own failures as like unfortunate luck, but our success due to our innate genius. It's much better to assume the opposite. If you see someone struggling with something that you don't have much experience with, you should expect to perform the same or even much worse. Again, this is a problem that affects entrepreneurs and businesses, where they'll see a company struggling with a problem and they'll think just because they're special and better, they won't have these issues. And then they start their business and they get overwhelmed by all the same problems and make even less progress than the other business. So unless you have some real unique knowledge about how to complete something, you can assume that whatever you want to do is going to be just as difficult or even harder than what other people experience. The Growth Mindset is proudly sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. Yes, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. I've generally found it the simplest way to hire for my own businesses because it's so easy to create a post and get it in front of the right people. You have simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on the right candidates with just the perfect skills and experience. As we all know, the right team member with a good mindset and a culture fit is invaluable for your business, so you want to be exposed to the best people possible. Small businesses consistently rate LinkedIn Jobs the #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So remember that LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster and for free. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/growth. That's linkedin.com/growth, GROWTH. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, and now onto the final concept, and that is to not be racist. This might seem a bit of an odd one to throw into the Growth Mindset podcast, but last week I did speak about prejudice, and I didn't quite have the space in the episode to talk about race in the way that I wished, but it does fit perfectly within this episode. For the past 100,000 years, humans have judged other races due to just our tribal nature and the need to think of ourselves as special. Yet the color of your skin is just due to like a small sliver of epidermis, about 1 millimeter thick. It's so thin that when you strip it off the rest of your flesh, it is translucent. And that's where all of your skin color is. Race is just a small sliver of epidermis. Nina Jablonski said that it's extraordinary how small a facet of our composition is given so much importance. People act as if skin color is a determinant of character when all it is a reaction to sunlight. Biologically, there isn't really a thing such as race. Yet look how many people have been enslaved or hated or lynched or deprived of fundamental rights throughout history because of the color of their skin. Now, racism is just simplistic thinking around the concept that we believe we are special. Our intuition is to judge others as less special than ourselves, and it's in our nature to fixate on any characteristics that we can find in others that might advance the feel that we are special or they are worse. So your intuition is basically a bit of a racist idiot without having some education or experience. The fact that racism has plagued our species for so long is a real leading indicator of our natural predisposition to see the flaws in others, whilst believing that there is just something more special inherently about ourselves. So the faster that you can overcome this, the quicker that you can see the world as it is, and you can see that your place in it, and you can understand that you are not special. One of the cool stories to help disprove racism was during World War II, an all-black squadron of fighter pilots was formed to prove that black individuals were as capable as their white counterparts. It was called the Tuskegee Airmen Squadron, and they really did excel in combat, and it helped prove to the military and America the importance of desegregating races. And another really cool story that has some other psychological themes going on was musician Daryl Davis, who is himself a black man, made it his life's work to befriend members of the KKK. He did this to prove that interactions between races can help really reduce bigotry and improve empathy and understanding. Over the years, many members of the KKK who met him ended up renouncing their views and even gave Darris some of their robes. So there are certainly so many more things I could talk about on racism, and if you are interested, I would be happy to go into that further. And on that, I hope that you have enjoyed the show today, maybe understood some of your biases and why they happen, and you can take it easy on yourself, but also be a bit more rational. If you think that you know someone that would enjoy the show, it would be incredibly useful for me if you would share it with them, as well as, of course, leaving a positive review, because that's kind of how the podcast gets a bit validated as something worth listening to by someone finding the show. So that would be super appreciated. And on that, remember that life is to be enjoyed, and that does mean by starting with enjoying today, because enjoyment is not something to put off to the future, because then it will never happen. So be kind to yourself and be kind to someone else too. Thanks for listening.